Update on the audit plan that was adopted by the audit committee on June 3rd, 2013. As you can see from our report, there are 50 items that are on the audit plan, numbers 1 through 50, that were approved back in June of last year. What I have done there is listed each one of the 50 items, and then underneath the 50 items, as we completed an audit, I listed those under one of those items. And so what you have are the audit plan, and then underneath each of those points are the audits that were done underneath that during this last year. Any of them that were approved since July 1 of 2013 by this committee. And I believe that was the request that was made at our last meeting back in March, was to give us a status report on the audit plan for this year. So what you have here are audits that were already completed since July 1, and you'll see the date on the far right side of when they were approved by this committee. Or you'll see continuous in some cases where those audits are just ongoing, and we'll make reports periodically on those items. Or you'll see several in there that are in progress. So I just wanted to kind of give you an update of some of the ones that we're currently working on. They are listed as in progress on this report. So at this time, if there are any questions, I'd be glad to answer them for you.
Go ahead, Monica.
Are there projects on here that you don't think you're going to get to within, and they'll roll over to the next plan, or you'll reevaluate with the risk assessment?
As you can see, there are several through here where there's nothing underneath that particular item for several reasons. One, when this was presented and approved last year, there was it was built on being fully staffed from day one, and we were not. And so we aren't at this point. So we didn't have all the resources to do it. And in some cases, we didn't know exactly what the original request was. We reevaluated. We did not do them. There are some things on there I wish we had done this year. So therefore, we will look at those and roll those forward into next year.
And at this point, if you can, are you fully staffed, or what is your vacancy situation?
We have 2 vacancies in the department. One has been hired but will not be coming until August. And so that was leaving us 1 vacancy. That one we have not posted yet. It's a kind of a mid-manager director level, and we have not posted that one yet.
Number 35, position control, ACM position control process.
Yes, ma'am.
But in our DIS, there was something, this says 11/21/2013.
Yes, ma'am.
So what's in our, on the disc was March 31st, 2014. So that's a
different one.
That's a different one.
Yes, ma'am. What in November 21st of 2013, there was a audit that was done and reported on for position control. It was approved at that time. Subsequent to that, and we'll see that in the next report, we've done a follow-up on that particular report, and so it's going to be in the next report for all of our follow-ups. And I will go ahead and tell you that we're also have expanded that. We're continuing to do the position control. It's almost become a continuous deal that we're working with HCM on that one.
Did we go back and look at 2008, because that's how we got the
We did not
64
go back
million?
that
Well,
far.
well, 60. No, not to go back to look for your scope, but the 64 million that happened in 2008 dealt with our position controls, and Larry at that time, Throne, put in some key things to make sure that won't happen again. So
As far as system things,
and processes in place, that's
Yeah.
what happened. So I'm just saying their history on position control, on why it's important, because in 2008 it was something with.
I don't remember that we specifically went back and looked at 2008 and the controls that were put in place at that time, but by default, I would think they probably were to some degree.
Just to know why it's
I
important.
think the gist of the problem was that HR had more employees than the budgeting department
Yes.
thought they had.
Yes.
And
And when they found out it was position, the 2 departments talking to each other and ensuring we had position control
right,
on that.
right. It's a good
So
question.
that's what got us in trouble in 2008. Just making sure.
Just recalling that report that was approved back in November, There are still some issues there between HCM and budget. Budget's aware of it, and so they try to adjust their numbers accordingly. And HCM is aware of it, and they're trying to make the changes necessary. It's going to require some software changes.
Oracle R12, I thought we were fixing that and transferring over to all of that we're talking to each other.
Apparently, there's still some changes, even in R12, that HCM is going to request in order for them to do position control to the degree that they wish.
So is there any way, are we looking at, I thought a year ago we had corrected that problem in our software side to make sure HCM, because it was a recommendation out of the STAR Commission, and I thought in 12, we made that correction. So we still haven't, because I see it's still partially in progress.
And I'm not aware of that particular recommendation, and so that one may have been corrected. I just don't know. What we found and what was reported in this report back in November was that there was still some manual process in this whole keeping up with positions over in HCM, that they're keeping positions on Excel spreadsheets, and there's 3 or 4 staff people that are doing that, and that's causing a delay in the information getting into the software system. And as a result, the software system is what budget is using, and so there's this continual delay there. And what we're looking at now is, or what we recommended at the time, was to digitize and put that manual system that they're using on Excel spreadsheets, build it into Oracle.
I would just recommend you look at 2008. It was a position
Go back.
control that 64, I think it was 64 million, that the board had to make a decision to, and it equals 1,000 employees.
I think it was before we all.
It's before we got on the
but-
board, but
yeah.
I remembered it, and it was that. So we can make sure got that under control.
Yeah,
I will say that we have talked to both budget and HCM on this deal, so they're both aware of what their shortcomings may be.
we'll want to keep an eye on that on an ongoing basis. So when you get to drafting the audit plan for the next year, please put that as one of the things to consider. Monica, did you have something else? Trustee Murat. Okay, Mike, let's move on to...
Keep up with this particular report, but we also got another report. This is the follow-up of the audits that we have approved, or you have approved this year. There have been up to date 83, I believe is the number, audits that have been completed one way or another. And so after our last meeting back in March, you wanted to report a status update on where we were on follow-up on some of these previous reports so that you would know what's happened during your term on this committee. And so that's what this particular report is. 83 reports have been issued. Several of these have had follow-ups on. We, quite honestly, were needing to get to this. We had not started that process yet, but we have now. As a result, there are 14 of these reports that have been completed at this time, and follow-ups have been issued. And we're working on several of the others. You see on this particular report, if it says completed, that means we have done the follow-up. If it means NA, that means there was nothing to follow up on because there were no recommendations. If we're doing one currently, I went ahead and put in progress so you'll know that that's currently being worked on. And then pending means we haven't got to it yet, but it's on our schedule. I see this probably being something that will be at every one of our committee meetings going forward from here, so that we constantly are updating this, and we built that now into our staff schedule to start working on follow-ups of previous audit reports. So again, if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them for you.
The other thing that might be helpful for the committee is to let the committee know if management is not taking action on certain high-risk things. Maybe just to highlight those. Or is that...
Is later in our agenda, it's going to be agenda item number 5.
Okay, maybe I didn't...
you're going to see in agenda item number 5, the committee will approve these 14 that we've already reported. If you read through those, you can see instances where either it hasn't been done yet or it's in progress and they've given us a later date. We were getting responses from management, so exactly.
Okay, so I didn't put those together, sorry, when I reviewed it, okay.
Question on the school audits, how are we working with professional development? Because when I looked at some of the school audits, a lot of it seems to me is maybe understanding, or are the systems talking to each other now? The activity fund talking to the school, because I know at one point, because I noticed it's like not putting receipts in on time, or it dealt with money. So are we, well, of course that's what we deal with, but are we recommending training, or are y'all recommending
You've
that?
hit upon something that we've also communicated. When I start going through all these school activity fund audits, they seem to be the same recurring issues from campus to campus to campus. And so I asked the question about training. They are doing training. There has been some change in leadership in the central office department that handles that. And so she's just come on, I believe, in January, if I remember right. And so they are starting to do that, but at this point, that's still an issue.
Are we recommended? I don't see any recommendation that they may
I
need
don't
to
think
be
we did on
one.
any of these particular reports,
Okay, 'cause
but
there seem to be the same, a lot of
I have communicated that just one-on-one, just to tell you,
the training.
conversations,
Okay.
yes.
That's the key. All right.
And we're going to be looking at that in future. I've already talked to their staff, make sure that we see what kind of training is provided and how often. One of the things that's happened this year that seems to be a little bit more than normal is we had a high turnover in our bookkeepers, our financial clerks, and in our principals. And so we really focused in on all of those campuses that had that turnover of personnel. They were our priority this year. And so that's why you're seeing some of the same mistakes, and that drives right back to this training that needs to occur.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
The last report I have is our hotline case management report. There's been a lot going on this year with the district's hotline. We just passed some policies that affected that at your last board meeting a week or so ago. But the case management system, or hotline, is managed by our office, the Office of Internal Audit, but multiple areas use that besides internal. Professional Standards Office, which is over in HCM, and the Child Abuse Prevention Office also use that system for whenever a report or an incident comes in, whether it's by a phone call on the hotline, by an email, sometimes by a letter. Various sources those come in. We record that onto that case management system. Internal Audit is the gatekeeper, and then we distribute those to the appropriate places. Some of them stay within internal audit. We handle the fraud and abuse incidents. Some of them go now to the Professional Standards Office, who handles personnel issues, but understand they have just now got started in the last few months in building their staff up. And so part of the year we were doing that in internal audit. And then the child abuse prevention group of people handle all the child abuse cases. So there's multiple people here, and we've been working with each one of these areas to make sure we're coordinating with each other. And sometimes we have to talk to each other to know who's going to handle what. But that is a fairly active hotline. As you can see from the report, there have been 703 incidents have been reported on our case management system. That's since July 1 and closed out on April 16th. Of those 703 reports that have been reported, 533 have been closed at this time, and 170 are still active, and we're working on either in internal audit, professional standards, or the child abuse office. So it's been very active. We are in the process of trying to re-energize that hotline and getting out some publicity promotion on that throughout the district, put it on the district's website and things like that. So we're going to try to re-energize that whole hotline thing. So if you've got any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them for you. Or Mr. Smith will be more than happy to answer them for them.
They're up and running and hired all their staff.
Which one?
The professional standards.
Professional standards. They are up and running. He just got his staff in. I just met them myself last week. So he's got 3 of his 4 personnel in place. The 4th one was being offered a position. I don't know if they've accepted. So they've just really, he's been operating, I don't know, since about January, I think.
The board approved it.
Since January, but he's just now getting his staff in place.
When you say he, who are you referring to?
Jeremy Levy.
Okay. Okay, and does anybody else have any questions for in terms of the jurisdiction of what the Office of Internal Audit does and what the administration is doing, and you have these calls coming in on the hotline, is any problem in managing those?
Sir, I don't think so. I mean, we're communicating back and forth with each other to make sure that we all know who's doing what. And then there was a personnel issue that came up a week or 2 ago that we're working with the Professional Standards Office, and they're doing the work, and we're kind of helping them since their staff is new. We're kind of working together on that kind of deal. So we're sharing information back and forth.
And you were talking about re-energizing the hotline by advertising it more. So, so you had some sort of dip over the past year that no? You just want to make sure that it's prominent.
Just getting the word out.
Okay.
New posters out and those kinds of things.
Website.
Okay. Let's move on to the next agenda item, which is to consider and take possible action to accept and make final the completed internal audit follow-up reports. Any discussion?
I think could you review, is it the ones? Right here. Is it the maintenance service, labor costs?
Yes, ma'am.
Those 4, was it 4?
There are 4 regular audits, and there's about 10 activity fund audits, total of 14. And you'll see on here, one of those 4 is the position control that was done in November.
Follow up on that.
That's the follow-up.
Your answer, I can't think of her name, question about management responding and following, management responding to your recommendations. You're going to answer that later on?
We have done this follow-up on like position control at this point in time, but based on what Mr. Mitch K. has requested, we are continuing with that because some of those problems won't be resolved until December 14. So we've got it on our list to continue monitoring.
Audits. You're going to address management response to
Yes.
taking care of it.
Yes, yes. Sorry, misunderstood.
Questions for discussion? Okay. It's been moved and seconded that we accept and make final the completed audit follow-up reports. And there's been no discussion. So all those in favor, please cast your votes by raising your right hand. Motion carries 3-0. All right, you have just adopted the motion, thereby accepting and making final the completed internal audit follow-up reports. All right, the next item is to consider and take possible action to approve the 2014-2015 Office of Internal Audit budget. And of course, this is going to be part of the budget that is approved by the board, so this is really a recommendation.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I move that we approve the 2014-2015 Office of Internal Audit budget for recommendation to the full board.
Okay,
Did you get that language, Faye?
Yes, sir.
it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Is this the budget? This is the budget you need?
Yes, ma'am. We've gone through that. The big ticket item that's in here that's a little bit different is we put money in, and I know that's a lot of money, and the purpose of that is to purchase audit software and hardware that goes along with that. So that's kind of a but it's something that is very, very needed because our current system is not supported any longer.
And the dollar amount of the hardware and software?
Hardware and software combined is $130,000.
Of course, last year at this time, internal audit did not have, as part of it, the investigators who were transferred from OPR into internal audit. And in terms of trying to get essentially same store comparisons, same department comparisons, is there a net increase or decrease in the number of personnel in internal audit?
Personnel is the same that was approved in the current year budget. The two departments combined that was approved in the current year budget was 23 FTEs, and we're moving the same 23 FTEs going forward, which includes that vacancy that I mentioned earlier, and so it'll be the same number of people.
Any other discussion? Okay, it has been moved and seconded that we recommend to the Board of Trustees that the 2014-2015 proposed internal audit budget be approved. That work for you, Fay?
Approved
A
for
different-
recommendation.
Recommendation to the full
recommendation.
board.
Okay, all in favor? Motion carries 3-0. Okay, we have just approved a recommendation that the full board approve the request by internal audit for the budget that is set forth herein. All right, the next item on the agenda is item 7, which is the committee chair's closing comments. And I don't have any comments other than to say thank you, Monica, for being here. Thank you, Mike, Don, and the rest of the internal audit team. Thank you, Kay and Faye. And we are hereby adjourned. Thank you. It is
26.
26. Thank you.